All right, fantastic. And sharing my screen. All right, well, welcome everybody to North Seattle Tech Talks, Landing a Job in Tech. My name is Steve Balo. Since many of you are new, I'll go ahead and do a regular introduction. I am the Internship and Employment Coordinator for the Application Development Bachelor of Applied Science program at North Seattle College. And what that means is I help students find internships and jobs, and I help our employers connect with our students. I have been with the college for about 5 years. Previous to that, I was a hiring manager and engineering manager at Adobe Systems, where I kind of went from intern all the way to that position over the course of about 15 years. Loved it, took a little sabbatical to get into education and have just stuck in there for about 5 years. Working with the college has been awesome. Working with this meetup has been really great, which we did as sort of an offshoot of the work that we do at the college. If you want to connect with me, the best way is usually email. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Please just let me know who you are and why you'd like to connect. And of course, you can also send meetup specific information by messaging me on meetup.com. I want to do a land acknowledgement, which is a little strange in that we're not all on the same land here at North Seattle College. However, the college and my own home are occupying traditional ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish. As keeping with the sort of pillars of what we do here with the program and this meetup, we have information at the first link there about the Duwamish, and at the second is action that you can take. So we're trying not to be performative, we're trying to be sort of action oriented. And I'll talk more about sort of our foundational guidelines. I also want to thank our event sponsor, which is the department I work for. This is the Application Development Bachelor's Program. This is a bachelor's completion program that helps students who have either maybe completed a non-technical bachelor's degree in the past, or they have completed a technical associate's degree. We are also going to be offering a 2-year application development associate's degree in the future. But right now, this is what I work with. Once you join our program, you are able to work on very hands-on work with web applications, mobile applications, cloud computing, and an introduction to data science. If you wanted for more information, you can check out the link below.
Steve, you're muted now.
There we go. Sorry about that. Or you can check out the link below, or you can send me an email or connect on LinkedIn for more information. We do info sessions about the program about once every quarter, so we'll do one in another couple weeks here. So, some quick housekeeping things. We are recording this session. It will be closed captioned. It'll be posted and sent out to the RSVP list. We do ask that you please stay muted unless you are actually actively asking a question or called upon or one of our presenters. For the most part, it's going to be easiest if you ask questions in the chat. So while people are speaking, giving their introductions, or when we get to the open Q&A, go ahead and put your question in the chat there. I'll sort of feed those to people as needed if they're not reading them themselves. So don't worry about that, but that's the best way to keep track of this with over 100 participants right now. Also, these slides and any slides that are presented today, not everyone has slides, that's fine. They'll be sent out as links later in the week. And again, please go ahead and mute if you are not muted already. While people are talking, I'll be sort of muting other folks. And last but not least, we have a survey that's going to be sent out along with the slides. We like to know how we're doing and how we can improve always. As mentioned, we have sort of our basic guiding principles for this meetup. These are the 4 I's. The first one is kind of the basic thing that you look for when you come to meetups, I think, which is information. We hope that you are learning something and walking away with something that you didn't know before. I can tell you, but from the people that we've invited, there's going to be some information that you'll definitely learn that is new. The second is inclusion. So we are striving to represent, empower, and welcome everyone. We're not going to be perfect in that, so tell us how we can do better in the survey. But we also hope that you're going to be meeting and learning from those that are just different from yourself, come from different backgrounds, have different life experiences. That's an enriching part of this. The third is insight. It's great to know that something is the way it is, but why? That's more interesting and more powerful, and falls into the next I, which is inspiration. So it's great to listen to everybody today, and if we don't do anything about it, we really haven't made much of an impact. So we are looking for you to go out there and make an impact and make change. So that could be executing your own interview path in a different way, answering questions with more confidence, whatever that is for you. On the other side, if you are an interviewer, you're going to learn a lot today about how these questions are asked, how they're perceived, and what you can do better too. So today our agenda is pretty simple. I'm going to stop talking and hand things over to Nadia from Hulu, Kevin from NBC, Francine and Keith from F5. They're going to speak together. Spandita from Nordstrom and Isaac from Tableau. This is going to be about an hour, give or take, maybe a little bit less. That's great. And then the rest of the time is going to be just for your questions. This is a panel. We meant it to be very question heavy. From running this before, we know that we will probably use up the whole time, and I'll also try to be respectful of the time and get us ending at 7:30 today. The questions that we posed to our panelists sort of as prep are here, and that's really around the 4 areas of finding roles, applying for them and the complications that happen during that, technical interviews and or behavioral interviews, and resources. So after we're done talking, where do I go to get information, to practice, etc. And again, as you have questions throughout this, go ahead and put them in the chat. Normally just put them into everyone. If you have something that's specific to the meetup or operations or technical issues, go ahead and do a direct message to me. All right. And Nadia, if you are ready, I can stop sharing and you are welcome to take over. You are muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to shuffle my darn desktop around so you guys can see it. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties, which is expected.
Only been doing this for a year, it's fine.
Yeah, all right.
Always new.
Only for a year. All right, share screen, and I want to do this one. Share, please. And we're gonna view presentation. Wrong one. Okay. Hey everybody. I'm Nadia. Nadia Barami. I work for Hulu right now as a software engineer. My little blurb of who I am and how I got to where I am is that I actually used to be a biomedical researcher. And that was about 5 years ago, and I needed a career change. So I went to a coding boot camp called Code Fellows. I did the program, I got out, landed a job at a company called Zonar, was promoted pretty quickly, multiple times within that organization, moved off to another company called UserMind, and then worked there as a lead, and then moved off to a consulting firm. And now I'm over at Hulu doing iOS application work. So my background is pretty varied in terms of the techs that I've worked in, the tech stacks, the languages, but it's been a wild ride. And I hope it's going to keep going in that kind of strange learning direction. So anyways, I'm just going to kind of answer those questions that were given to us in some quick slides. And hopefully anything else that you guys want to know, you'll just ask at the end and I'll be able to contribute there. So how do you find the role? If you are actually specifically interested in a company, then go to their career site. I know that sounds simple, but go to their career site and apply. The one that's not so simple, that's really interesting, is follow them on Twitter or reach out to people on LinkedIn. And it sounds a little strange to follow a company on Twitter, but I actually have 2 friends who also work in the tech field, both of whom have gotten their jobs through Twitter. One has gotten their jobs twice through Twitter, once for Starbucks and once for the company he currently works at. I actually cannot remember what the name of that company is. And then my friend, literally in the middle of COVID, got a job working for D&D Beyond. So if any of you are D&D geeks like myself, he loves that company fandom so much that he followed them on Twitter. They said they were applying for jobs, and he reached out. He actually DM'd them and said, I'm actually starting to restudy for interviews. Can I come interview for this job in about 2 or 3 months? And they said, absolutely, check back in 2 months and we'll go from there. And he landed it. So definitely, it seems not quite a direct route, but if you have a very specific company you're interested in, that's how you're gonna go after those guys, especially in this time. In terms of finding opportunities where it's when you don't really have a specific company that you're going for, the shotgun method is classic. So Indeed and Glassdoor searches, I believe when I was first searching for jobs out of a code boot camp, I started doing 3 job applications per day. And that was my goal. I just started firing off 3 job applications per day. It didn't take very long to get a job after that. But the hardest part is getting in the door. And once you have that first job, after the first 6 months, that's like when recruiters will start hitting you. So that experience, that first 6 months, is really going to be what drives you to your next role. So if you're going to go for shotgun opportunities, it might not be your ideal role, but that experience might leverage you to some place you would rather be down the road. LinkedIn, networking, go find me, add me. If I find opportunities, I'll let you know. And meetups that are topic specific. So in Seattle area, for instance, we have something called Puppy, which is a meetup that's Python specific. It's Puget Sound Python programmers. They have job channels where people post Python jobs constantly. So if you have a specific language you want to work with, that's kind of one way to actually go about targeting that kind of an effort. So what's actually involved in the interviews is obviously there's going to be behavioral questions and there's going to be technical questions. For behavioral questions, those are going to be probably the first two, maybe 3 rounds, depending on how intense your interview is. I know that certain bigger companies like Hulu, I actually went through 3 or 4 rounds, I want to say. And the first couple are literally just to check, are you a human who's not going to be problematic if they were to hire you? Are you kind of worth the time to interview? Because interviewing takes time, it costs money, and it's a pretty involved process. So have set answers, right? These are like behavioral questions. So if somebody's going to be asking you, tell me about a project that you've worked on, like make sure you have something that you're interested in, that you're highlighting, have it like set so you know exactly what kind of technical details to highlight, especially if you have the job requirements in front of you. Try and line up your answers beforehand with what they're looking for. You don't need 100% of whatever is on that job thing. That's always a wish list, is what we refer to it. And in terms of like my job, where I currently work as an iOS developer, I had actually never worked with Swift in my life when they hired me. But that didn't matter based on my experience and my learning capabilities. So having set answers and making it very smooth and flawless, and so you're confident in your capabilities, will come through in the interview. So make sure you practice just basic people skills almost. For those of you who are not coming from a traditional kind of collegiate background where you study CSE for 4 years and then go out to the work field, embrace your backstory. It actually matters. You have skills that engineers straight out of college won't have. I used to be a project manager of a lab, so that is something that I definitely highlighted. I've worked with people before on their resumes. One of them had a fashion background and she wanted to be a front-end designer. So I said, highlight your creativity from your fashion work into your code and see how that translates. Like, really embrace what you do. Find the thing that will give you that edge that somebody else wouldn't have, right? And really hone what that is, right? Even if you were like a cashier and you're just like, well, that really doesn't go anywhere. Hey, you were a customer service representative. You were on the front line, right? That means that you are a customer first person. And I know that sounds like a little bit like BS, but really that's kind of how you're going to try and cultivate kind of, this is why I'm somebody that you are interested in. It's not just my tech skills. It's not just my engineering skills. I'm an asset in other ways. Always have the solution. So this is an interesting one, and I know it sounds a little absurd, especially in an interview. But what I mean by that is, don't always have the solution. You can say, I don't know, in an interview. You can absolutely say, I don't know, in an interview, especially during the technical part. During a behavioral question, though, when they come to you and they say, tell us about a time you had a problem, either with somebody or on a job, and you start telling them about this time that you had this issue, you need to provide the solution you came up with to solve that issue, right? They're not asking you that question to see, oh, you know, what kind of things stump this person. They are asking you this question to see your problem solving skills, to see your capability of managing conflict within interpersonal relationships, right? So when I say always have the solution, especially to behavioral questions, don't have an answer that doesn't have a solution or will back you into a corner. It's not it's not a good idea to do that, especially when you're doing all the prep work beforehand, right? Just always make sure you have examples where you also had the solution on the other side of that. So being concise, very important. That's all part of practice. And being confident, that's probably the number one thing. I will tell you that the first job I applied for at Hulu, I did not actually get, but I did so well personality-wise in that interview, also tech-wise, I guess, but personality-wise, that they said, we're going to find a position for you. And that's actually how I ended up as a software developer in the iOS mobile department at Hulu, is because they liked me so much based on how I interacted with people, based on my questions and explanations, that the job that I was going for, they didn't think I was qualified for. So they just found me another job with a language that I didn't do, because they trusted in my abilities to pick things up very quickly based on my explanations and my history. So that kind of being concise, being confident, making sure you actually have answers to these questions, they are important. I mean, it's kind of what landed me this job I'm at. I did find out that team that I was interviewing for initially has gone away, but it was kind of a nice thing to hear back from the recruiter. We actually like you so much, we're going to find you somewhere else to go. And then always have at least one question for them, right? It engages the interviewers. It really gets them to think about their job, and it actually makes it more of a conversation rather than putting you on the spot. So even if it's the exact same question for every single interviewer, always have a question for them, right? And I actually usually do ask the exact same question for each interviewer. When it comes down to the actual technical part of the interview, I do a 5-step process, and that 5-step process is really easy. This applies for whiteboarding as well as just doing it, especially now during virtual times and COVID times, with these 5 steps essentially. So first one is to define the environment. That means ask questions, right? If somebody's going to give you a palindrome question where they're giving you a string and they want to know if you can make it into a palindrome, return true or false, right? You can start asking, will it just be alpha characters, or do I have to worry about numeric or, you know, punctuation? Is it Does lowercase versus uppercase matter? That kind of thing, because that step shows that you're thinking and that you're engaged, and it also draws them into the conversation. The interviewer probably came from a big problem where they're trying to figure out, you know, data discrepancies in their Redis database or something like that, right? They came from another problem into this interview. They're probably still thinking about it in some cases. And a lot of times they want you to succeed, because if they find the right candidate, they don't have to interview anymore. So they want to help you. So both by asking them questions, it shows that you're thinking, but also gives them the opportunity to like share thoughts and processes with you, which might actually help you with the actual technical portion. Write your test cases. That's step 2, basic one. So palindrome problem again, you know, A, B, A, B, C, like basic things. That's just to really do the basic cases, and that will help frame kind of your technical, what you're going to go forward with when you're actually coding this problem. Pseudocode, you don't have to fully pseudocode, but this is actually pretty important. I actually do lists, so you have a step-by-step logic solution, essentially, right? So if it was, you said define the function, make things lowercase, exclude punctuation, and then start coding. Now, step 4 and step 5, get to the solution. I mean brute forcing, and this is different depending on where you are in your career. If you are at the start of your career and this is an entry-level job, it is acceptable for you to be brute forcing to get to a solution. If you are later in your career, kind of, and going for like the big dogs, like the Googles and the Facebooks and all of them, you're gonna want to talk this step through. So you're gonna actually maybe talk and tell them the brute force solution and say, well, you know, it wouldn't be very optimized, but we could do this. But you're not actually going to write it down, right? You're just talking it through, because in that case, if you're going for the big guys, refactoring and optimization, especially for questions like Google's questions are designed to take more than an hour. So if you tried to brute force it and then refactor it, you're going to run out of time, and they're going to think that you can't get to the optimized solution first, which is a big important thing. Now, in terms of if you are a beginner and entering the field, it doesn't matter as much. Of course, they always prefer the refactored and optimized version. But if you get to the solution and then refactor and optimize, it shows that not only do you know time complexities and you know that you can actually go back and you know, do better solutions for these problems, it shows that you can get the problem finished and then move on and make it better. And a big highlight of this is be communicative throughout the process. If you are somebody who cannot code and talk at the same time, that's fine, but don't leave the interviewer hanging. Just say, hey, I have to go quiet while I think about this for a minute, and I'm gonna talk you through my solution at the back end of this, right? That's actually pretty important, so that they know not to interrupt you and try and derail you in a different path that they might have in mind already. Because if they don't know that you're actually thinking, they might have thought that you froze. And everybody, including your interviewer, knows what it feels like to freeze during an interview. It's not a good feeling. So if you're not talking to them and communicating to them, they're going to think that you froze, and they're going to stop you in your tracks and try and hint you, and it will seem like you don't know what you're doing. So really try and like be communicative, do that kind of thing, talk them through your thoughts and ideas, and then just do it. And that's kind of how you're going to get through the technical interview part. As far as resources, you know, code challenges are good practice. I use HackerRank and Code Wars. The Crack and Code interview book is a classic, and a lot of the bigger companies use problems straight out of that. And if you want to chat with me, that's my thing. So hopefully that didn't take too long.
No worries. And I have been recording the questions we've been getting, and I'll come back to those after we're done with the intros, so we make sure we get to everybody. But excellent. Thank you so much. And Kevin, if you want to take over next.
Hi, everybody. I'm I have a different kind of set of slides today. Thank you, Nadia. That was awesome. And I think you'll see mine complement what Nadia just said. Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm engineering director here at NBC News. Well, here, there, everywhere at NBC News. My team builds better show than tell. Oops, but don't show your private conversations. We build the mobile apps, which, you know, let everyone know Trump lost, whatever, right? No big deal. We also build the TV applications and our own backend. So I lead about 3 teams. And so the perspective I'm bringing today is really like what I'm looking for. So I can't speak as much to the level of detail Nadia did, but let's just get started. I hope everyone can kind of, I don't know if I can like be spotlit or whatever, Steve, but like I'm not going to bring share screen, so hopefully my this horrifies me. So hopefully my image is large enough.
Everyone should be able to change their view to highlight the
because this is how I'm going to run it, right? I think I'm tired. I think people are tired of slides, so and they want to see a human. So the first thing we'll talk about is networking, right? I got a chance to doodle too, which I don't often get a chance to do. So I'll try not to repeat. Actually, I'll be throwing away slides if I feel like I'm repeating past speakers. But my first is a prediction. I think a surge is coming in terms of like the demand for like in-person, maybe not in person, like that's already a loaded word, but like I think there's going to be a surge for networking. We've all been lonely. We've all been isolated. Companies have been under hiring freezes. I want to pep you guys up to you folks up. Sorry, guys, it's not the preferred term anymore. To really be ready for your moment, right? Like this is not forever. And there will be a time where all this pent up like hunger to connect, to really get to know other engineers, to seek out new opportunities, it's just gonna go off like a rocket. So it's really important that, yeah, just don't act like today's forever. I hope the text isn't mirrored. I realize I didn't do any kind of visual check. And then the next one is, my next point is weak ties are the difference, right? There's a lot of, thank you Steve for the thumbs up. There's a lot of social science research. And as I get more managery, I bring up more social science research and less computer science research. But like weak ties are really the difference in a disaster. Like it's friends of friends or friends of friends of friends that really come through in the clutch. Like your inner circles are always fully activated, right? So it's really important to kind of like put down that shame to like reach out to the friend of friend or to the friend of friend of friend. So I really want to embolden you. Like I dare say most of your networking limits are probably like self-imposed. Like the fact that you're here tells me you have more network connections than you realize. Take a screenshot, right? Like look at all the people here. So toss out a few that I think Nadia covered. So that's networking, right? And I can't wait to see you guys. I hope you all remember this weird presentation. Such that when I get to see you in person, you'll remember me, right? Like that's what I'm starting to optimize for. And I really encourage you to do the same. Next is searching, right? The canonical, my daughter was like, what is that? So I think in contrast to a lot of strategies, like I want you all to augment your search with depth search. And what I mean by that is add more really specific keywords to your searches. Look for, like, it's almost like, you remember when phishing turned to spear phishing and it stopped being spammy emails for everyone and then started being spammy emails creepily for you? That works on me as a hiring manager. That works on me, right? And an eerie number of matched keywords, right, can really come through. So depth search, and the impact of like depth search is, I think you end up getting better results. You end up seeing better job listings because you start to get a sense of like your proximity to the tech team. If a job listing is a bunch of like really general terms, if you see React and iOS and Golang and AWS, and it's a brazen keyword search, a keyword grab, the way you all sometimes do, I'm sure. You're many hops away from the technical team. A really, really well-written job description is you should feel that the tech team is much closer at the front door than for other opportunities, right? So what I mean by depth first, like I mentor a couple of people through Mint, this program that Steve introduced me to, and I find time and again that like early career people look really broad, and there's this almost sense that I'll take anything, right? I really want to challenge that. It's you only like Yeah. So I don't want to belabor the point, but depth search, like I think augment your breadth search with depth search. Like some combination of the two will be optimal. And so user proximity sensor, right? Like at each step in the process, right? And especially in this pandemic, like you will get a sense of like how far that tech team is from you, right? Like at some companies, especially the bigger ones, you're many hops away, right? But you can in your thought experiment, think of the tiny company, right? You're probably the CEO wrote the job description, right? There's 3 people, right? So somewhere in the middle is your sweet spot. So definitely as you apply, I think I would shift your psychology away from like it's a lottery and I hope I get picked right out of the hat, and more like you're already getting information coming your way about the company. It's like and to be extra sensitive to that. And then lastly, I think Nadia touched on this a little bit, but look for adjacent roles, right? Once you've kind of spearfished a few of your dream roles, take a zoom out. Like this might be your last chance to avoid a hellish next job, right? So are they slammed? Like what are their openings look like, right? Like I think if you look at the general jobs page, it's a really nice snapshot. It's really more a resume of the company and where you're going to land, maybe the team, right? But look at more than just that job, right? Are they also hiring 8 PMs to support this job? You probably won't have one when you arrive, right? So that is the search. So pause for questions, except I'm just gonna truck forward since I think the structure of this is to take questions at the end. All right, it's so handy having you right there, Steve. All right, next is screening. So I drew that like Swiss cheese thing that Dr. Fauci made famous. And so right off the bat, my comms radar is on immediately, right? In terms of the screen. So like, yeah, step 1 is I look at your resume, right? But like, are you wasting my time already? Is kind of what I'm saying, right? Like, way too many keywords is a binnable offense. Like what it says is I will do anything and I will try to fit into any container and I'm liquid. I want like I'm looking for solidity, right? Like it's really important. So that's the main way I think people waste my time is that I have to read a 4-page resume, right? For a 2-year-long career, right? But just qualitatively apply this, right? Hand it to your friend and see if they like zone out before they've read half your resume. But yes, the comms radar is on immediately, and it doesn't even have to be face to face. Like you're a piece of paper on my desk, so to speak. Not really. But I'm already right. Like you can imagine, Mike. You've seen managers' calendars versus engineers' calendars. Like I'm so defensive about my time. Like yeah. Anyway, I can belabor that point on and on. I'm looking for rate, right? Like there's 2 graphs here, right? Like here's a low experienced person that looking ahead, they're blasting off, right? They're learning, right? Every little like Git trick you teach them, right? You find that 3 other people on the team learn that trick, right? They create virality of truth, right? And then here's the person that's like, 150 is enough, right? I'm comfortable, right? I'm looking for this person, right? So don't be cowed by your experience level, right? Find a way to make that rate seem like the second order value to be really good, right? And so that's so this is purporting to answer the how we screen question. So how do I measure rate? I talk to you for 30 minutes about your career path, right? That's how I apply it. I don't think a lot of other hiring managers do that, but all in all, like I think smart teams that you want to be on are looking for people that are going to grow. Like I think successful teams, especially successful small ones, know how to do this, know how to get undervalued people and properly accrue them to the right value, right? And then the next step after I've sort of validated that your career path is a trajectory that I'm excited about and can match what we need, right? Like, you know, quick aside, I mean, I guess I'm rambling on, it's weird to call it a quick aside. Like most teams have the skeleton crew. And so by being a low experience, high potential person, people like my team's willing to take risks. My team's willing to look for these game-changing people, right? So the next phase is what I want to encourage everyone to think about, these dreaded take-home things. For us, it's a writing sample, right? And that's not just like the bias of being at a journalistic organization and way of thinking. The intent of it's like, it's not to be done, it's not to be done fast. It's to show your authorship, right? Like show where you care. So I'm actually over the moon when someone stubs out a part of the code they don't care about, right? Or I'm actually over the moon when someone writes really good unit tests for a really simple application that they're turning in. So it's really important, I think, at the screening level to think of anything you submit as writing samples. And if the company treats it like something else, I start to worry, right? If it goes in the bin as soon as you've hit submit and they've decided to green or red light you, that's a bit of a flag for me as a searcher. What I want to see as a searcher, as one of you in your shoes, I'd want to see them carry that code on to the next round if you make it, and continue to iterate on it with you, right? That's what we do. So it is a writing sample, and just like I imagine the journalist side of the house interviews, we talk to you about the writing, right? After we've decided the writing meets a certain quality and style bar. And then I don't know, I have a blank slide. That is it for applying as far as the structure. So I'm a manager. I didn't put it as technically rigorous as Nadia, but I hope that gives you a sense that, like, at my purview, I validate a career path, and then I look at authorship. I look at a writing sample. So I'm aware I'm probably going to go over time. So tips, one up mushroom, right? So first thing is this is a picture of The Voice, right? One of my NBC colleagues' apps, right? Chairs turn for you, and you really lose out if you don't realize this. I think a lot of early career, a lot of people who are new to tech feel as though like Google's this monolith that says yes or no, right? Like the truth is the recruiter wants you in. They're tired of searching for them. If the role's been open for too long, they're already on your side, right? I mean, even if it hasn't been going on too long, they're already on your side. There are chairs already turned from the get-go, right? But as with venture capital, there's like many things are this way. You will turn sides one by one, and so as soon as you detect that that person who gave you the phone screen is really excited, and you see them again in the next round, or I don't know if I'm saying anything more concrete than like, let this buoy you, right? That it is not you versus everybody, right? Like you have allies. My recruiters will tell you my intent, right? Like none of this stuff that I'm telling you today will be secret. If you apply to a job, you ask Kelsey, she will tell you like all of these things I'm telling you. I'm fully transparent about my intent. Also tier your keywords, right? One devastating thing is that, like, I don't know how, like you can subdivide like core competencies from interests, but if to conflate those two things in an interview is devastating. Like to come in with like, I'm sort of interested, or I read an article once about, and then to be put under the microscope of a technical interview for that topic, I've never seen anyone recover from, oh yeah, I actually don't know that. So that is it for my tips in terms of what I see. Bias, this is a really big question. And so I feel like a game show host, I didn't expect this. So bias, right? Like this is an insidious thing. You create monocultures, right? That's why I care so much about bias. It's not political correctness. It's not like I get promoted because I have a diverse team, which I do. It's monocultures are really dangerous, right? Like bees or die, right? Like all these examples of monocultures are dangerous. So what do we do at NBC News? First is an inclusive panel, right? And this is a flex for me, right? Like some of the other hiring managers in the room might not be so happy to see me flex like this, but I just get to assemble an already diverse panel who give their feedback, who are the you know the face to the candidates, right? So I don't know if that's useful to you, but here on NBC News, there's no real replacement for just having diversity already on the panel if you want diversity, right? It's very, very, very difficult to go from monoculture to diversity. If every single person in interview looks and talks like I did when I was a developer, it's trouble, right? Let's see. So the next thing we do is we peer review. We're never done. When we sit and we talk about a candidate, it's about half the time. The other half of the time we grill each other. Is that good enough, right? Like, aren't you subject to bias, right? Like I have a place in my hiring committee's debriefs where, yeah, the second half we iron sharpens iron. Like we give each other feedback, and even the person who's been doing the same question for like 3 years still comes in. He's an excellent interviewer, still comes in with like, I can make it better this way. And I think that's one of the best places we've rooted out bias. It's like a debugger. It's like the thread stops for the debugger right about there. And then lastly, like what we do at NBC News, freshest feedback. what else there? So sort of like where bias really creeps in, where good intent still is when the memory gets to fill in gaps, right? Or like when like if I don't debrief on a candidate for like 2 days, 3 days, let alone a week, the details that go away are filled in by all my intrinsic unconscious biases, and that's really dangerous. I've seen teams that are full of diversity, full of good intent, fresh, stale feedback smells. So, all right, let's keep trucking. Interviewing, I think the framing that I was given for interviewing is problem solving. So the first problem I see when I do live interviews is people go out of bounds, stay in bounds, right? Like I think Nadia said that Google calibrates to like a little over an hour. You're not going to go that far afield. You're not going to be citing computer science research in your question, right? The number one thing I see in live interviews is straying out of bounds and failing to check, right, where the boundaries are, right? Like this is in part knowing your audience. I think Nadia alluded to this one as well. Be calm, be present. The best way to do this is to practice, right? Like I'm sure every single person who's going to interview who hears the sound of my voice is like, shoot, I didn't practice enough, right? There's no replacement for having been there 15 times, right? I will casually mention Tom Brady. Why did I do that? There's just no replacement for having been there, right? So to the extent that you can be there, right? Some people say dance with companies you don't really care about, whatever. Not even talk about confidence. In my experience, confidence and presence are the same thing, right? Like if you're thinking like, oh crap, what did I say 2 minutes ago? What am I gonna say 2 minutes from now? You're not confident, right? Like to an external observer, being present and being confident are largely the same thing, right? And is this my last thing? Sorry, my handwriting is so bad. I haven't said that in so long. The result isn't what you think it is. I have never felt like I've aced a technical interview, yet I've received job offers, right? So I think keeping there's something about someone who slumps out of the building that is already kind of tacitly voting against themselves. This is in the before when we used to have in-person interviews. But more often, my toughest interviewer says yes because the person was tenacious, not because they got to the answer. My best interviewer, you know, I will confide that I think I have a best interviewer. That's a little bit weird for me to say. This person talks about communication clarity. This person talks about resilience, right? Like going on a detour and then ending up in the right place can really give your interviewer a sense. And this is my last and I feel most important point. This is your window, right? The most dangerous thing, the biggest mistakes I've made in my career were not accepting the data that was plain as day coming from these companies. If your interviewer like suffers like an anxiety attack or like lashes out at you at a certain point, like mental health dragons be lurking, right? Like if you don't see diversity, if you don't see coordination between right, recruiting professionals and software engineers and managers, if you don't see that, if you don't see preparedness, if two interviewers are giving you basically the same question, it may be difficult for you to do given your stage in your career and your desire for experience, but run, right? It's really more important to maybe get quality experience over entering one of these infamous grinders. So appreciate us taking extra time. How have we adjusted to the pandemic? A lot of the arbitrary crap has been cut out, right? We can now simulate what it's like to work here a lot more easily remotely. And so we do, right? So our job, a lot of what was kind of like this used to be the scariest thing I would do in an interview, right? Here's the whiteboard pen. We won't do that anymore, right? We have new code with us, right? And lastly, EQ, right? Like because in pandemic, I don't see those wonderful interactions between my developers at their desks. All I see is a little phone icon on Slack on two people, and they're talking, right? so I really need to be able to trust what I can't see. So really like bring your emotional intelligence. That means like everything from your cordiality to your presence to not freaking out when you think you're bombing, because you might not be. So don't tip your hand by freaking out and telling everyone that you're bombing. All right, so that's well beyond my scheduled time. I'm so sorry. I'm so passionate and so excited to hear your questions later today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. All right, Francine and Keith, I don't know who's driving slides or starting first.
I can, Keith, you want me to drive slides?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
Bear with me. We have to follow Kevin. That's awesome. I was so in tune with what he was saying that I forgot to get my slideshow ready. Hang on. Hang on.
Well, we want to thank everyone for attending, and we're very excited to talk about F5. You know, F5 is a great company, a great culture, lots of opportunity, and Francine and I are going to talk to you about F5 and how you can get involved with F5 and how, more importantly, you can get employed with F5.
Okay. Sharing screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Keith, why don't you start with the introductions?
Sure. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us here for this this tech talk. My name is Keith Bowers. I work for F5 Networks and been with F5 for over 20 years. So that tells you that the company is a great company. I have to say the culture, the products, the people, it's just a great work environment. And we also, we learn from one another and we grow from one another. My background, I've kind of been around the horn, different places. Maybe date myself a little bit, but I came from North Carolina. When I was younger, I said, you know what? I need to leave North Carolina because I may get myself in a lot of trouble while I'm out here. So let me try to move as far as I can while still being in the United States. So I moved to Seattle and I hung out in Seattle for a couple of years. Then I joined Boeing as a network engineer. I worked for Boeing for 3 years. Actually, no, I worked for Boeing for actually 8 years. Then from Boeing, I went over to F5. And ever since then, I've been with F5 since then. Once again, I love it. My role right now is a technical trainer. So I teach courses. So whenever a customer buys our products, I teach them security courses. I teach them authentication courses. I teach them traffic management courses, TCP/IP, DNS, cloud computing, you name it, I pretty much teach it. So that's my role within F5. I also have another role also as the co-chair of the Employer Resource Group, which I'll talk about that here in the next few slides. But that's it for me. Francine, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Keith. Francine Johnson, I am what they call an F5 boomeranger. So I have been in technology for more years than I can even recall. And I spent 10 years at F5 I started out in account management and then worked my way all the way up to a VP of global service sales. But before deciding that I wanted to go back to school and further my education, so I did, and went to Seattle University and took all of my experience on the road. I left at F5 for around 5 years and went to a private tech company and then an e-commerce company where I just really learned a lot about the customer success and some of those new fangled, terminologies around, customer experience. And at that point, around a year ago, I'd really completed, the customer journey end to end. And then I was presented with an opportunity to bring those skills I learned on the road back to F5 and start a brand new program at F5, building out their customer experience organization. So it's been a blast so far. I've been back around 9 months, and it's nonstop. But I love it, and F5 is a great company, and it's having this opportunity to experience tech in a different way through the customer lens it's really exciting. So we're gonna fly through this. Kevin and was it Nadia, went into a lot of excellent detail. So we're going to just really fly through the slides today with the focus on finding the roles, how you can apply to roles, some tips we have on technical interviews, and then some resources and QA for you all. So Keith, you want to take it from here?
Sure, sure. Thanks. And by the way, Francine, we did miss you. We missed you. So just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
No one may not say that out in the public, but I'm telling you that for person. So how do I identify career opportunities at F5? Yes, number one, go to our homepage, f5.com/careers. I think right now we have maybe over, I want to say globally, we have maybe over 30 or 40 open positions right now, from software engineering to a couple of internship opportunities, I believe also to a couple of security opportunities. We just acquired a company called Shape, and Shape is in the security space. So we're blending in really F5, NGINX, and Shape really into one company right now. So lots of opportunity in the security space. Also, once again, in the software development space, lots of opportunity there. Next, attend webinars, career fairs, tech talks. Now, this is kind of a passion of mine, I have to say. As I mentioned earlier, one of my roles with F5 is a co-chair of an employee resource group called F5 Appreciates Blackness. We have over 8 ERGs within F5. We have a women's EIG, a veterans EIG, disabilities or abilities EIG, multicultural EIG. Let's see, I always forget one, Latinx EIG. And all those EIGs really are like a safe space for when employees come in or interns come in. We have them come in and just talk about us as a culture and as a people. And one of the things that we do within our resource group is that we have tech talks, and we conduct things like mock resumes. We conduct different skills that you can use for building your resume, for mock interviews, for presentation skills. So I saw a lot of different questions in the chat about, how can I really own my skills in those different areas? One thing that we will do, and we've talked to some of the people with App Connect, actually at the App Connect program, we're actually going to sponsor some of those events with you all. So we're going to actually sponsor some mock interviewing sessions and some resume building sessions. And so you have experience, right, with some of the some vendor who's actually out there in that space. So very, very important, and we definitely want to do that with not only with App Connect, but with other universities that we have partnered with. And next, follow us on Twitter or join LinkedIn community. We have a LinkedIn community with F5, very, very large community. I want to say over 1,000 people in the LinkedIn community, where you can learn about new and exciting opportunities with F5. And one that's not up there, and I think Kevin and Nadia both said it, is ask someone who say, hey, do you know F5 or do you know anyone from F5, right? I mean, word of mouth, friends of a friend of a friend is always very important and always very, very beneficial and relevant whenever you're looking for career opportunities, not only within F5, but other companies also. Next slide, please, Francine. Thank you. So the application and screening process, how we do it at F5. So you go on to our career site, and then if you see an opportunity that you're really interested in, you submit your resume at our website. And then from there, a recruiter would then screen your resume and review your skills and your discipline that you're applying for. I'm quite sure that everyone here has great skills and in different areas, right? Not just software engineering, but marketing, management, finance, it's all across the board. It doesn't have to be technical to really have a really good opportunity within F5. And then each candidate would then be selected by a recruiter or a hiring manager for a first round interview. Now, in most cases, especially technical roles, in most cases, you may have over 3 or 4 interviews within F5, right? The first one may be like a very, very high level screen, and then we'll do a deeper dive. So the more interviews that you go through, the more deeper dive the interview process will become. Okay. Then third thing is successful candidates will then go from first round to a business group interview, right? Where you may have 3 or 4 people in the room to where you will get questions, right? And those questions may range from, like what do you want to do within F5 to where do you see yourself in 5 years? So those kind of questions you want to prepare for, some of the basic questions that you may get from any employer, not just F5. And then once you go through, I say maybe 3 or 4 rounds of interview, on that 4th round, more than likely you're good to go. If you've gone through 4 rounds of F5, you definitely thumbs up and you did it. And in most cases, you would definitely get an offer from F5, and then we will welcome you with arms open, high-fiving all the way into F5.
So this is, I'm going to talk just briefly about bias. And this is an area that I'm really passionate about. I have at F5 been known to have the most diverse teams in the company. And I take pride in that because when I look at candidates, I am looking for something special about them. Like, what is it that makes you unique? One of our BF5 principles is around being human first. And we take that very seriously, especially as part of our interview process. So I don't see your resume. Okay, the resumes are first, screened by our recruiter, and then we are blind to your resume through the interview process. I don't see it, and nor does anyone on the team. We are doing behavioral interviewing specifically based on how you show up, and can you answer the questions that are related to the job that you are specifically applying for, right? So there could be something that I might ask you around, can you tell me about a process that you developed, and give me a specific example and how you implemented it, and what was the final project, right? So this is about really acing the behavioral interview with us, and to the point that the Kevin and Nadia made earlier. Practice is key. Like, this is not something that you just walk into and think that you're going to wing it, because you won't be successful. I love the fact that the big emphasis here has been made on making sure that the preparation and all of the due diligence goes into not only the role that you're applying for, but the company as well. Like Kevin said, this is your window, right? We're not only interviewing you, you are also interviewing us. This needs to be a good fit for everyone, right? So if you're getting a good vibe from me and I'm getting a good vibe from you, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to go on to the next interview round. This is about how we relate. Are you a people person? Are you someone that can team well? We are really looking for cross-functional leaders that we can train not only in the area that you're interviewing for today, but the area that we see you in tomorrow. So this is, even as an entry-level employee, we are looking for employees that have the ability to think big picture and not be afraid to be innovative and share ideas. Now, I recently had an opening for a customer experience data analyst, a really important role on my team. And I wanted to make sure that I hired someone at entry level. I wanted to give the opportunity to someone new in career who was trying to break into tech, because I know from experience how difficult that can be. So I brought this individual on board, and they only had 9 months of experience with an internship and a college degree. And they are doing a phenomenal job. This is all about how we show up with our human first approach and make sure that we are coaching, mentoring, providing the tools so that this individual can be successful and not encounter the imposter syndrome that some of you mentioned in your chat. You want to make sure that whatever company it is that you decide to work for, that they are going to support you. That is going to be key to your success. So this is I don't do technical interviews, right? That's not my ministry. I'm not I'm not by any means technical, but what I can do is research. So I reached out to some individuals on the team who do conduct our technical interviews, and I said, break it down for me as just a normal employee, right? Like you can talk the kind of the technical mumbo jumbo, but just give it to me how I would be able to then take what you're saying and relay it to, these incredible students that I'm going to be talking to during this panel. And I took some of what they said and I just decided to, debunk some myths. Like I love myth debunking because sometimes the hardest part is getting over that fear of, failure, right? Like you want to go into this and you want to be confident and you want to be calm and you want to be poised and you want to kill it so that you make it to the next round. So I created, this list of myths here, and I some of them like really stood out for me, especially the part about taking a few moments to think. The senior level technical folks that I spoke with were saying that you want to make sure that you're taking the time to provide a thoughtful answer, right? And it's okay to say, can you give me a second while I think about that? They want to know that you're not kind of flying by the seat of your pants and giving them what they're not asking for, right? And so, when you are able to take that time and demonstrate, your really your strength, which is your ability to connect using your problem solving methodology, you are seen as a stronger candidate than the person who freezes or the person who doesn't actually answer the question, right? So that's when, taking a few moments to think before you answer is really key. And then the other thing that I really got into the thinking out loud during the whiteboarding session, and the fact that it's really a two-way dialogue and they love it. The senior folks that I spoke with, they were like, man, Francine, we love when the candidates come to us and they want to dialogue with us and they want to talk about the trade-offs. They want to talk through it. That lets me know that they're thinking like they can, this is someone that I believe that I would be able to mentor and grow into a role, and not someone that's coming in thinking that, maybe they have all the answers, or that they might be afraid to take a risk by trying to dialogue with me, right? Because sometimes it can be a risk. And I'm not saying that this two-way dialogue works in all cases, but I can tell you that the folks that I spoke to were extremely sincere in the fact that they like the two-way dialogue. And then, interviewers don't necessarily want to be amazed. I see this all the time. I'll be interviewing somebody for a role and they're trying to impress me, but really I want to know, can they answer the question and be transparent about what they do or don't know, so that I am confident in the answer that they're providing. And so the same thing, the way that I break it down in a normal interview is the exact same thing with a technical interview. They want to know if you can start working through the threads and have the experience to solve for whatever it is that you're being asked. That's one of the keys to successfully landing a technical interview. And then, don't think that you have to go in there with complicated questions. Just go in there with some questions, right? You want to ask clarifying questions. You want your interviewer to know that you're thinking, right? So this isn't about just going to a website and figuring out some questions and thinking, oh, I'm gonna, really impress him if I ask this. That's not what this is about. You want to make sure that you're asking questions that will make sure you and your interviewer are on the same page. Because you know what? When somebody asks me a question, I normally end up giving more information than I should. And that's how you successfully land an interview. I can't say it enough. When you start that dialogue and you're asking questions and I'm answering them and I'm getting excited because I can see your mind working and you're connecting the dots and I'm learning more about you as a human, that's when we find the success.
Thanks, Francine. That's great, great information, no doubt about it. And the pandemic has not slowed us down, not one bit. We are still growing, we're still thriving, we're still very vibrant. Once again, our culture is just amazing. Our hire process has not changed at all. We just can't join you in person, but we can definitely still reach out to you via Zoom. And hopefully we'll be back in person soon. Hopefully we will. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. And as I mentioned before, this spring, we're going to offer some different workshops for resume writing, presentation skills, and how to thrive within a technical internship and other fun topics, right? We're going to kind of try to make it as much fun as possible. And check back with us at f5.com careers. As I mentioned before, also our ERGs are also going to do some of these workshops to different communities, your community being one of them. And both full-time and intern hiring, F5 begins in around late August timeframe. So once again, please check with us at the careers for the internship process so you can kind of get involved in the internship process. It's normally a 10-week process in most cases. Different disciplines we kind of try to engage, like software engineering may be a discipline, security may be a discipline. So definitely please feel free to reach back out to us if you're interested in any kind of internships or any kind of full-time hiring within F5. And please remember to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, reach out to us. Francine and I, you have our email addresses, our LinkedIn URLs. Please reach out to us and let us know that we are here for you. We're here to answer questions. And we want you to be a part of F5 because once again, F5 is great. It's a great community to work for and work in.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you both very much. And we're moving right along. Smedita, if you are ready to take over.
Yeah.
Or stop trying.
So I do not have any awesome presentations like all of you before me, but I'm just going to verbally speak about those questions. So
sorry, do you have video available, maybe?
Oh, yikes. Not sure why it's not showing up. Do you want me to figure that out, or do you want me to continue? Hello?
Whatever works for you.
Okay, so I'm gonna continue because it's almost going to be 7 soon, and I know we have to give time back for questions. So my name is Pandita. I'm originally from India, but I studied in University of Florida, and I did a master's in computer science. Previously, I have done internships at Quicken Loans, and I currently work as a junior engineer at Nordstrom, and I have only been in the industry for like about 2 years. So I have had recent interviewing experience, and it is scary. So the first question is, how do I find opportunities? And this is no different from what the others have said, is to basically network. And one of the things that Nadia said was to like connect with the company on Twitter. Now, this might feel like a weird thing to do, but it is an important thing to do because firstly, it keeps you updated on what the company is doing. That gives you the ability to ask right questions in the interview about the company. That would also give you an insight on where the company is going and if you want to work in that company. It would also give you a very good insight of what tech skills that company might eventually need, depending where they are trying to go. And if that skill set is aligned with your career goals, or is that something you might want to grow into if you go join that company? Because you don't want to make your life hard by joining a company you don't plan to stay in and then look for interviews again. At that point, you might also have to explain in your next interview why you are leaving the previous one so quickly, things like these. So really give it some thought on what the company is doing that you are trying to join, and if you'll be able to survive in that company for a good amount of time. Apply to almost any, apply a lot, like either use referrals or use the job postings that is on the official website, and they tend to change pretty frequently. So keep an eye out. Don't apply to one role and just be like, oh, I applied for this company, I should never go and look back. Keep looking at it because that role might be filled up. Your application might not be considered anymore because the position got filled up. So things like these. You might also want to consider if you like the location of that company, if you want to get relocated over there, things like these before deciding if you want to join that company. So the second is, what does the application and screening process look like? In most of the companies, it's normally applying through the company's career website. But the sad thing about that is that your resume is probably going to be scanned by a bot first before even the HR person sees it. So the tricky thing to navigate that is to cater your resume a little bit to the job that you are applying for, which might increase your chances of your resume screened through the bot for that job, like as much as possible. Use referrals. So I think, Nadia, it was again you who said that it's important to know your friends and their friends. It is important to know, and it is sometimes also hard to, like, survive those kind of networking um, events, but please do that. Use internal referrals to apply for a job. That is usually one of the safest ways in which you can, be confident that your resume is definitely being screened by someone within the company. Um, let's see. For some of the, so normally there is just a behavioral and technical sections to an interview. For behavioral, there are some, a good way to answer a behavioral question is to use what is called a STAR approach. It is situation, task, action, and result. Sometimes behavioral questions are very can be negative based, like how did you handle a project that was not delivered on the timeline, or what happened when you had like a conflict with your coworker. So especially for questions like these, which tend to be on the negative side, I suggest preparing it, thinking of like a place where you previously have failed or made a mistake, and showing it in a way where you learned something out of it and how you improved out of it. Because you don't want to say that I had a conflict but I did nothing about it, because the person asking you that question probably is trying to understand how you would handle something similar in your team. So it's important to show how you handle the situation. For the technical side of interview, the important thing in a technical interview is unfortunately communication. So while you have been given the question, you want to communicate to the interviewer that you are actively present, listening to that question, and trying to understand, the edge cases for any given question, especially if it is an architecture or design question, because they are high level and they're mostly like, how would you design Twitter? And you do not want to start answering that question without asking some of the follow-ups, like, what what kind of audience would this application use, or um, things like these. So ask follow-up questions before immediately trying to answer a question. Show your thought process throughout the questions. Be very aware of basic data structure and object-oriented principles. Once you are done with your solution, provide some kind of, like complexity of your solution, whether it be time-based or space-based complexity, or some, if it was a design question, maybe you want to talk a little bit about resources that your application is using, or how your application is getting deployed or accessible to like a real customer, or what could be the cost associated with your application, to give this impression that you understand a little bit end to end on what it takes to get an application up and running. Um, if it is just a purely technical question, then it's best if you write some test cases to showcase that the code that you have written is actually working. And it's, as a person who is taking an interview, it gets a little messy if everyone is trying to go line by line talking about what would happen or will happen for a particular input. So it's easier if you just write a test case, and that would give everyone this confidence that, yeah, you wrote the correct thing. um, So for resources, personally, the resource that I find the best is Lead Code. somehow I don't think it was mentioned before this, but I think lead code is really helpful to give to us to code, but it also gives you a self analysis on where you are, because their questions have like difficulties, and their questions are ranging from actual coding questions to, you know, design and algorithm based questions. So I think lead code is a pretty like expanded view of possible questions that can be asked. And then the final thing is just do as many interviews as possible, even if it is a small interview and you may not be so inclined on taking that job. But if you have been given that opportunity, it's best to interview, because some of these things come best with practice. So, and yeah, I guess that's all I have. Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Vandita. And now handing over to Isaac.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm going to keep it pretty short. First off, I mean, Nadia, Kevin, Keith, Francina, and Vandita provided a wealth of information for all of us to listen to. I'm really curious about this, not seeing the resume thing. So I'm definitely going to pursue that because that's completely new to me. But I wanted to keep it short, and I also wanted to get credit for this assignment because I also did not have slides. So I'm just attaching my name to the end of the project so I get full credit. A couple of things I want to say is I started in the tech industry when they needed a pulse, and that was the only requirement for us to be in. So I've been in the industry for 20 something years, I think about now. And the landscape of the tech world has completely changed since then. And it's especially true because of COVID. And people are not hiring as quickly and as much as they were prior. Prior to COVID, I was actually reading I was reading resumes and probably doing 2 to 5 phone screens a week, which is pretty extreme for a couple months, to just source candidates for other teams and for teams myself. And everybody prior to me actually provided some really great tips and everything, but I wanted to add some of the human elements. I think somebody was calling it out in the chat about the human elements. When we interview people, we're really looking at teammates, and we're also looking at people who can enhance who we are as people. What I mean by that is, I mean, a lot of times we're looking for those skills that aren't necessarily the CS skills. We're looking for the soft skills. We're looking for people to be a part of a team, usually a very diverse team with very different people coming together, working together on a project. And that diversity and that inclusion is incredibly powerful for us to be able to build teams that are successful. How would you go about getting opportunities? Everybody's mentioned Twitter. Go to the websites and shoot resumes at the website. So one of the things that, as somebody who's read a lot of resumes, that is completely frustrating to me is don't just drop keywords into your resumes. And that's been mentioned a couple of times prior. When you're writing a resume to a job, I probably won't read your cover letter, but it is nice when people cater that resume to the job that they're looking for, so that their resume has some relevance to the job skills that I'm actually after. What I'm saying is basically cater your resumes to the jobs you're after. Highlight the skills that are pertinent to those jobs. Also, when you're sending in resumes, don't tell me job descriptions in your resumes. I'm not interested. I'm more interested in reading about your success. Like, what did you work on? How were you successful? What did you do? Was there something you learned? Keep it brief because we have to read a lot of resumes, but I always like to highlight those type of success stories. The resumes will usually, in my company, I work for Tableau Software, we will actually all go through your resumes together and read them prior to you coming on board and doing an in-person resume. Some of the things that I really find powerful in-person resumes is avoid using acronyms or industry acronyms that might not be relevant to me and my role, because I will either know it and pretend I don't know it, or I won't really know it. When I ask questions, follow up if you don't know. I prefer honesty over stalling techniques. I prefer people to be very clear and concise about their questions. I also like it when I'm doing technical interviews for people to talk to me constantly. Like, I like to know what's going on in your mind, like how you're thinking about a project or a problem, and I will provide feedback and information. usually a lot of our technical interviews that we do tend to be open so that we try to get the candidates to actually ask us questions. We try to be vague a little bit about the requirements to see if they'll like ask us questions back and ask for more clarity. So ask clarifying questions, speak to the problem, speak what's going on in your minds, speak about strategy. If you're at the whiteboard, we've already invested a bunch of time and energy into you, and we want success. We really are looking for people to be successful in their roles. We're not trying to weed people out. This isn't high school chemistry 101. One of the most important and powerful resources you can actually use is your network. Your network, reach out to people, have coffee, have informationals, ask people if they know somebody in roles that you're interested in. Just keep really work that network and create new connections, build stronger networks, and just really just put a lot of effort into reaching out. If any of us, I believe I'm speaking for probably the majority of the presenters here. If we provide our email, please use it. Feel free to use it. We try to respond as best we can. I do. I get bogged down and forget. But when people ask me questions, I always try to respond in a timely manner with accurate and useful information. I know we're over time, so I think I'm going to wrap it up and hand it back to Steve. But good luck, everybody. And I hope everybody has great success in their lives as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do, so we've got about 35 minutes and a ton of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the top, and then what we're going to do, try to get at least 2 different voices on every question. Maybe the person that it was directed at, if that was the case, and then someone else. And then I'll try to keep things moving. Starting at the top, we have one that was directed at Nadia, but Francine actually had some great advice here too, which was, what are the set questions or ideal questions you would ask the interviewer?
Set questions that I always ask the interviewer. I always ask every single person that interviews me 2 things. What do you like most about the company that you work at? What do you like least about the job that you work at? Because it shows that you're both positively looking for things that you want at this company, and it shows what your coworkers focus on. And this is really, really important because you can gauge the culture of the company that you are at, and you can tell what kind of personalities you'll be able to interact with. And that's actually extremely important. Let's be real. You spend about 40 hours of your week, if you're lucky, it's not more than that, at this job. And you want to be able to enjoy the people you work with and the culture you work for, right? And you should always have a set question. So those are the 2 that I ask every single person that interviews me in any of these panels, because it gives me an idea of who I'm working with on a daily basis and what's represented at the company. And believe it or not, I am slightly wary of companies where they're like, nothing's wrong, everything's perfect. Hulu was one of those. Surprisingly, it's been amazing. There's only been like 1 incident where I was just like, oh my gosh. But other than that, it's been amazing. And people did have answers, right? They did have answers for what they liked least about what they were doing. But none of them were deal breakers for me. Like some of them were like, sometimes we have to go long when we're doing a big push. That happens. It's not something like, management doesn't really listen, or, I feel kind of left out of some decision-making processes by product or something like that, right? It's not those kinds of problematic things. So find out what's important to you, find out something that's going to engage the interviewers and make something work. And I would consistently ask that question across the board, just so A, you don't have to think of other questions and be on it, and B, so you can have a side-by-side comparison, because you're going to be interviewing managers, you're going to be interviewing recruiters, and you're going to be interviewing your level software developers, right? So you're going to see what everybody focuses on at different levels of the company. And that's why I pick those questions that I do, because then you start seeing the branching network of socialization within a company, and you know when to run and when not to. And that's what I do. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Anyone else want to jump in on that question?
Sure. Hey everybody, this is Kevin. I'd like to suggest two that you consider removing from your set questions, or at least refine them. One starts with, so I looked at your company's product, ... right? The dangers there are like putting me back in a meeting I didn't want to be in, right? Like that's my job, right? To worry about that stuff. And so just as me as a human, I'm here to talk about you. I'm here to talk about kind of new things. And like, I guess if you're interested in like, at worst, you're like telling me about a bug that I would rather find out from my QA staff, right? And then how big is your team? Just like think 5 more seconds about it, right? That number is going to change because of this process, right? Like, so it's important if you're interested in the kind of the tree structure of the team or the core values of the team, ask that, right? How big is the team feels like the laziest question on earth.
One of the questions
All right.
sorry. Oh,
Go
one of the questions that I like to ask, I mean, this really can the way that this question is answered can determine whether or not you're interested in working for this company. And it's, do you have a culture within a culture, right? Are there parts of this company that maybe operate with a culture that is different from what we expose to the public as our overall culture? These are our corporate missions, our values. These are the behaviors that we expect our employees to drive. But are there several different cultures that exist along the different business units, right? Because sometimes there's this pause and you have to wonder why there's this pause before this question is answered, right? Because you want to make sure that when you go into these companies that the people that you're interviewing with are being transparent, and the way that question is answered will give you that answer.
Excellent. All right. Next up, this was specific on, very specific on technical interviews, but how many test cases should you come up with? And again, this could be for anybody.
I just do base casing. So it's literally the simplest possible input and what your expected output is, right? And so I'll probably take like 2-3 seconds to do, or not 2-3 seconds, like a minute to like write down like the base cases. So if I go back to like palindrome question where you're doing like taco cat, right? It's like a single letter, that's technically a palindrome, or you can ask your person that's interviewing, would you count a single letter as a palindrome? It would be 2 letters, AB, BB, technically fine. And any kind of outward thing. So if they say, you know, punctuation needs to be removed, so it's like taco cat with a colon, right? That would be one more base case that's kind of an edge liner, right? It's you're not trying to solve for everything. You're trying to get very simple inputs so you can logically step through the problem and solve it that way. And that's about it.
Whenever we do test cases, we kind of do more of a troubleshooting exercise, just to kind of see where your mind is going. In troubleshooting with networks, I mean, you can just go all over the place, right? You can go from very specific to very, very detailed. So we just really want to see kind of the steps that you would take to solve a problem, from very, very simple to very, very basic steps.
Excellent. Next question is about, I'll just paraphrase here, people encountering issues with being overqualified. If someone is overqualified and how to answer or avoid that topic. The exact question was, what does the interview mean when he or she asks you are overqualified, and how to answer or avoid this question?
I have been told that I was overqualified for one interview. And instead of saying, or instead of arguing or anything like that, right, is that all I said was, you know, that might be true, but I'm very interested in what your company does. I'm very interested in the culture that you guys have. Like, I redirected as to why I'm interested in this position, essentially, was my response, right? Because if they have an opinion about your skill and how it lines up, that's their opinion. It's going to be ingrained, and you're not going to look good trying to force it or change it in the spur of the moment. And that's not something that you can truly practice for. So before I go into any interview, I do actually look up what the company's working on and have that in my back pocket. I usually don't talk about what the company's working on, much like Kevin was saying. It's because it does bring people out of the interview and into their meetings they just came from. But in certain cases where they're doing that to you, you may not want to work for a company like that, because it already shows that the interviewer has set opinions about what they're looking for, and they're not really looking for somebody who is adaptable and wants to grow and wants the position, right? So it might come off as a red flag. And in another way, if you really want it, just redirect and emphasize why you're interviewing for that position, what drew you to it, that kind of thing. I'm sorry, if anybody else wants to talk first. I feel like I keep talking first.
You're okay, Nadia. You're right.
All right, so this one I'm going to merge two questions together here, and it's about tools like HackerRank and Interviewing.io and Pramp.com and things like that. These are places to do interview practice, and in the case of HackerRank, a tool that's used sometimes as part of the process. So Smedita, I mean, you might have a good insight onto this part of it, which is how often are these technical interviews actually conducted within one of these, especially now?
Well, Nordstrom tends to use this thing called CoderPad, in which we don't use any of these other platforms that were listed, but basically it generates a unique link that we can send to the candidates, and then candidates use that link to code in whichever language they want across multiple interviews that happen in the same day. And yeah, is there anything specific? Like, do you want me to go into the workings of how CoderPad looks? I don't know if it is accessible to students as such.
No, I think if you have a resource link or something like that, I can actually include that in some of the answers online in the message boards. So that's a for later thing, but thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think in the chat, folks had sort of provided answers to where can people practice in person, as far as in person, quote unquote, at the moment. Any other suggestions besides like Interviewing.io and Pramp.com and things like that?
I have a suggestion that doesn't have to do with practicing interviewing necessarily, but I have formed essentially a small study group. I'm not actively interviewing at all. I like my job currently. If a cool job comes up, I am an aggressive interviewer, so I will go for it, even if I like my current job, just to kind of stay fresh and see what else is out there. But I essentially formed a small study group with a couple friends. One of them is on my level. One of them is brand new. She took a C# course and has never landed a job. She works in IT. And we all just kind of meet on a Wednesday and do HackerRank together. And it's to kind of keep people on top of it. And if you're in that resume kind of region, it gets really disheartening to send out resumes and not get answers back, or to go to interviews and get hit over and over again. I understand, especially if it's your first job. So I definitely suggest looking around at classmates and being like, hey, 2 hours a week, let's just sit and talk and code together on different HackerRanks kind of challenges. So it's not quite an interview thing, but it's definitely something to keep your skills up and keep your morale up, honestly, to land that first job. Because the first job is the hardest, guys. I'm sorry, it just is.
All right. Next question. This was originally directed at Kevin, but I think it's open for a lot of folks. As a hiring manager, did you honestly look at someone's resume who just graduated from a boot camp versus someone with a 4+ year degree the same? Sort of, I know a couple people talked about, I think Keith talked about it a little, and Francine talked about the imposter syndrome thing. Definitely be a big deal. A lot of people on this call coming from very different educational backgrounds. So
One of my most recent kind of prize hires is a boot camper. Boot camps really can give you accountability and structure such that like green, if you don't know what the green grid on GitHub is, get to know that. It's like kind of like your commit pulse. Boot camps have a wonderful way of just putting a solid block of green right there. So yeah, absolutely. It's a different set to filter through. I'm happy to talk about more details offline, but a lot of people have talked about prior backgrounds. Coding, software engineering is fundamentally about communication and problem solving. So if your background came with that and you marry that to the mechanics of code, like boom, right? Yeah, I won't go on and on, but absolutely, I think the boot camp thing is more of a signal to noise problem. There are a lot of people who are looking for the quick fix. In short, like when I look at boot campers, I'm looking for someone with that depth, like who has in their very short time, like shown passion, not just kind of like a desire to just have keywords.
And there are
So
also
related to
certain
that-
boot camps that are tied to different companies also, right? You have different companies sponsor boot camps. It's a good way to get your foot in the door through that boot camp experience.
I would also add that one of the things that helps separate you from the masses is a Git repository that's publicly available, especially if you're looking for a technical role. If you provide me a link with projects you've worked on, especially if there's like downtimes where you're not working, that helps explain the downtimes. That makes me feel more positive and endearing to you. But being able to go and actually look at your code and the code that you did is incredibly powerful. And it's a huge motivator for getting people in, even if they're from non-traditional backgrounds. And I would recommend that if you do have some downtime, look for coding projects with nonprofit organizations. It's a really good way to commit to a project, schedule your time accordingly, and just really commit to those nonprofit organizations. And then you get that as like an experience bonus in your resume. And that's something that's incredibly powerful and motivating for us.
Excellent. And we're getting a few tips in here for people that want to network, by the way, in parallel to the conversation here, which is great. I will try to get the chat included in some of the download. I have to separate out some of the things if I can. So another question, this was during Kevin's talk. As a hiring manager, do you see those coming in to interview with that quote, fake it till you make it mindset, or are you more drawn to those who are keeping it real? I think I know the answer to this based on what I'm hearing from everybody, but I'll let you all talk.
I don't really understand the question. Like, are they being dishonest? Like, what is the difference between faking it till you make it and keeping it real? Isn't admitting that you're kind of faking it till you hopefully make it kind of keeping it real? I don't really, sorry. If the asker would be so bold as to clarify, but otherwise I'll pass to somebody else.
Yes, if they want to throw more information in the chat, I will append that to the end of the list here. We had some definitely opinions on cover letters. This person was just asking if you have any tips for them. So I'll just leave it at that.
I don't read them. I don't read them personally. I don't know. I was gonna say, I think the recruiter gets those. I don't see them. So I'm not sure what other experienced folks have.
I plus one that, except when the resume doesn't make sense with the job. So if your resume tells a narrative, right? Like you're looking for senior iOS because you've been doing junior iOS, don't include a cover letter. But if there's a story you need to tell, that's the right place to do it. Right, it's sort of like code comments. It's like usually the code naming in the code should tell you what it does. But if it's really hard to do that, you leave comments. I would think of cover letters as comments.
When I was first starting off, I included cover letters whenever there was a requirement for cover letters, and I got it down to a very quick form letter, essentially. So the first paragraph talks about you and your experience and your passion for code. Why did you take these steps to transform? That paragraph literally never changes. Second paragraph was essentially, I'm interested in this position, change the name of that, at this company because da-da-da, and write one sentence of why your skills align to the position that they're asking for. I only did this because some recruiters don't look at the resume if you don't submit a cover letter. They may not even read that cover letter, and it's honestly not good practice for them to require something that no one's going to see. But sometimes some recruiters are just like that. So if they're requiring a cover letter, write a cover letter, get it down to a really quick form that you can submit, like change like 2-3 things on it and fly it out the door. That's what I did when I was first applying. Now that I've have enough experience, you don't even need to do that anymore. I work mainly with recruiters and there are no cover letters involved. But for your first couple jobs, if the form requires it, do it. Even if you're like, why? On the other side, my very first attempt at going for a company was Marvel. I'm a huge comic book nerd. I sent a cover letter to Marvel out of the blue through a friend of a friend, and I included a picture of me in She-Hulk cosplay. I got the interview. They were really impressed. I did not get the job because it was PHP and I didn't know PHP. So it can actually help you at certain points, especially if you're really trying to like stake something home. So there you go.
I will add another anecdote is when you're using those form letters, make sure to actually update the name of the company and the position. I have received many cover letters asking me if I would like to, thanking me for considering them for jobs at Comcast, Boeing, all sorts of other places I have never worked and was not hiring for. So that's that proofread sort of basic thing. Related to this, any resources for software development resumes? By the way, if you join our program as a student, I will definitely be working with you on this. But if you don't, resources for other folks. None of you have them.
I'm sorry,
right.
I was typing in the chat. What was the question?
No worries at all. That's something where actually I'll offer my services. If you are interested, I've got some resources. You can send me some information via the meetup group or send me a direct email, and I'd be happy to connect you with some resources.
Go to Steve.
All right. Go ahead.
Say go to Steve.
Just know that this week will be a little bit slower to respond. I'll have a lot of people reaching out, I have a feeling, this week. So be patient, we'll get there. So this was a question during Francine and Keith's talk, but how valuable is customer service? I'm going to focus in on customer service or health insurance, but customer service experience in the software development field.
Keith, you want to take that?
The customer experience in the software field. Ooh, that's a good question. Whenever you, I'm sorry. Whenever you develop software, you must have the customer in mind, right? It's kind of like that blank sheet of paper that you have, right? You have a blank sheet of paper and you have a problem that you want to solve or an issue that you want to resolve, and you want to do that on a blank sheet of paper. And to me, whenever you're writing code, you need to envision what the customer really wants, what the student wants. That's kind of how I envision it. Francine, you're more the customer experience person on that one.
No, yeah, I think you nailed that, Keith. I would just add that one of the, since at FI we look at everything through a customer lens, like it's out. We have an outside in focus as opposed to an inside out, right? So we really try to anticipate our customer needs and the work that we do is really around what do we not only want those business outcomes to be, but also the customer outcomes. So I would, say that having that customer service, customer first mentality is key in any role that you're entering in tech, because you're not coding and building for the company. You're coding and building for the customer.
Excellent.
I want to add that, sorry, this is Kevin. Whoever has customer service in your background, consider whether you liked that about your last job and whether proffering it now slots you in the way you want to be slotted in. Like, sure, it could give you a little bit of momentum as far as plausibility that you're a good problem solver and can do things under pressure, right? Direct communication, that's really important. But I have someone on my team who didn't mention that, and it's just like, well, I didn't want to be on call. I didn't want, so if just be careful, like with what you proffer from your previous life as strengths, if you don't want to renew that aspect of your life in tech.
All right. Next question, also during Francine and Keith's, is what are some suggestions for someone who has a strong technical skill background, but maybe has problem with communications? Either they didn't specify what ways, but what are ways they can work on that?
Practice, practice, practice. Practice with individuals, practice with different groups, sit in front of the mirror and practice with different teams. That's kind of what I always recommend. It's just practice makes perfect, and prepare. Also prepare for your interview, and whatever situation you're going into, always prepare for that situation.
I want to add two quick things. Explain something technical to someone who's not so read up in it technically is one. And the other is find someone that you really trust. Like, I think the danger of where practice is inefficient is if there's a nice person sitting across from you being like, that's fine, right? Even though it's not, right? You need to find someone who's brutal with you. And that you have, a close friend or a stranger, right? There's these two different classes of people you can get that from. But even strangers will be polite to you and say, nah, you're fine, when actually no one in the room has heard anything you've said.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, communication is key, right? I mean, there's different levels of communication, right? So the question is kind of broad, but there's communication with your peers, there's communications at the executive level, there's written communications, there's verbal communication, like making sure that you're well-rounded with your skill set and can, go from, presenting to your immediate, supervisor to presenting at the executive level. Those are skills that you'll gain over time. No one really expects people new to career to come in and be able to go in front of e-staff with a polished presentation that would meet their needs. But you do have the ability I would hope for, at least I know at F5, you have the ability to take courses on how to improve your communication skills. There's LinkedIn courses on that I know are readily available and free of charge. And I believe that there's also courses probably through the community college where you can learn some of those soft skills. That's where I learned them. When I entered tech, I didn't have a degree in anything. I had to figure out the different language that the folks in tech were speaking. And then that's how I started to, build my communication skill set.
Just quickly, I have a friend, and she's amazing, and she works in tech, and she gets very nervous during interviews, not because she doesn't know what she's doing, but because it's her second language. English is her second language. So she gets very concerned during interviews. And that's really where you start seeing the practice and doing those behavioral questions over and over and over, and making sure that you have those set things to talk about, whether it's like database work or APIs or, your React skills, whatever the project you work on, just really make sure you know it through and through. Talk to somebody. I made her explain a project that we worked on together 4 or 5 times in my backyard and completely ripped her multiple times. So find somebody who's going to do that for you in a nice, supportive way, where you're also like, but you also did this, try again, say this. And she can nail any interview she goes into. It's a confidence thing. For me personally, I'm bad at public speaking. I know it doesn't seem like it now. Karaoke, which is weird, worked for me. Also, Toastmasters. There's something called Toastmasters. It's a very, very helpful skill. They do a lot of different talk programs. And that's something you should look into. It's something that is very important, and it's why I've excelled and gotten so many jobs in a 5-year span. Is because I can very easily translate what business is trying to tell engineers, and I communicate very clearly, you know, customer needs or what the clients want when I was doing consulting, for example. So this is just as important of a skill. So if you took classes to learn coding, take the classes like Francine is saying, to learn these skills, if you can find no other way to do it.
All right. Next question is about sort of circumventing the bots. So Smita, I think you mentioned encountering applicant tracking system issues or perceived ones. And this person was asking about recommending mailing your resume directly to a hiring manager, assuming they have that contact information. Is that a good practice, bad, and why?
If you have connected with this particular hiring manager through an event, then it absolutely makes sense for you to email the resume. It's probably one of the reasons you all connected. Outside of that, I cannot say if the hiring manager is normally how active they are within the recruiting process in their company, because they might just look at it and somehow miss it if they are not very active. The best, I think that the thing that usually helps people is to go to LinkedIn and increase their network and use LinkedIn to find employees in the company that you're interested in who are also very active on LinkedIn, or, you know, active in diversity and belonging in general, and like maybe have them put a referral on your behalf if you know them somehow. But outside of that, if you want to directly connect with someone, it's best to attend conferences or events where you might have a face-to-face contact with someone with whom you can collect their emails and then send your resume. I personally haven't had any luck if I find emails from here and there and send my resumes to them and they don't know who I am. So
So as a kind of a wrap up for the panel, I want to piggyback on that and ask about like referrals have been brought up over and over again and growing your referral network. What are your sort of 1 or 2 bullet points of this is how I did it, or this is how you can do it to grow this, especially for a lot of folks on here don't have other people working in software, don't have family history of folks that have been in the business. What are your tips? And Smita, you've answered already, so but you can.
You know, I'll say I recently hired a few months ago. I hired an admin assistant, and her background was in working at a bakery and coaching soccer. I was intrigued. I like the fact that she had, you know, been a bakery manager, and that shows me that demonstrated to me she can multitask, right? And then she's a soccer coach, a volunteer soccer coach. So she's managing, you know, 2 different things, and one's volunteer, one's paid. And then she, I could tell based on her background that she was new to career. She had just completed her degree. So I looked at her resume and I reached out and I eventually hired her. Why? Because she had amazing communication skills, and I believe she was coachable. So a big part of this is, you know, I guess it kind of goes to that whole the willingness of the interviewer to take a chance on you. Some people, you know, we all look for different things in candidates, but you know, for me, someone gave me a chance one day, and I am paying that forward as often as I can. So you will find that with a lot of interviewers that somebody opened a door for them and they are more than willing to open the door for you.
Other folks? Isaac, you've been quiet.
Oh, I was just thinking to myself about this because my background, I went like Francine, I graduated from Seattle University with a degree in physics, but I didn't actually want to get a degree in science. I was pursuing an art degree, and somehow I got sidetracked. So my background kind of like meanders to tech, but like I said before, I had a pulse and I got hired. What I'm seeing now is a lot of times when people give you their emails, they're sincerely meaning like reach out to you and make contact. And I've done from previous work with Steve on these programs, I've had coffee with people. And so feel free to ask if we could get like a virtual coffee and talk about resumes and roles and how to write a resume or how to get direction or who you might need to meet or what are the types of people you're after to meet, because sometimes we have insight and we get caught up in our lives and we forget to reach out and, like Francine said, pay it forward. And it's a nice reminder to have an opportunity to pay it forward as much as possible, especially for those of us who come from a different background. And like mentioned earlier, find your voice. It's really important to find your voice. Being able to communicate, being able to be part of a team and being part of a community is so fundamentally important and valuable. It amazes me how those soft skills are sometimes lacking when we interview people and how fundamentally important it is because we spend so much time together. We're hiring teammates, like I said earlier.
In terms of referrals, companies provide referral bonuses. So people are wanting to actually refer people because we make money. And sometimes like a previous coworker, if we get hired in on him, he'll split the bonus with the person he's hiring because he's super nice. So it's also incentivized by the employees to refer you. That being said, if I don't know you, if we don't have that 5-minute coffee date, if I don't go over your resume and talk with you, if you don't send me a project that you've worked on and I've never worked with you, I will not blindly refer you because it can reflect badly on me. So definitely do what Isaac is saying and reach out. And Francine is absolutely correct in the pay it forward. I'm a half Middle Eastern female engineer in tech. Like it's a small crew of us in there. So everybody who I get in who is from a diverse background, who is not necessarily traditional background, is a win. Because that makes our products better, that makes our crew better, that makes everybody think outside the box. And I have actually done resume reviews. I've done this panel before for Steve, and I have done resume reviews for people who have reached out. Now, if all 120 of you reach out, I'm not going to be able to get to you very quick, but like I am willing to do it. And that's something to know, is that the thing that limits you, like Kevin said earlier, is your own kind of anchors, right? That's going to be the big bridges, is if you can't send that message that says, hey, I would love to, chat with you sometimes. And if they don't write back, it could just be that they're busy. Maybe try one more time. Other than that, move on to the next person. Hulu and Disney, for instance, are huge, right? And for those of you looking for this is a small plug, those of you looking for internships, I know a lot of companies have been offset because of COVID. Hulu is actually still going to do their interview or their intern process now in spring as opposed to August. So this is the first time we're going to see a not direct college to company pipeline of interns. So there's actually an advantage right now for people who have alternative backgrounds to get those jobs. If I had the link, I would send it to y'all, but I don't have the link personally, so I'll watch for it and send it to Steve if I get it. But this is like, a lot of companies are doing that right now. They still want the interns, they still want the workforce. They just had to offset it because of the new protocols. So this is an advantage for the first time for people from alternative backgrounds. And you really should embrace your background, embrace your narrative, find your story that really will drive you through these interviews and link you to the tech and your passion, right? I still talk about my Marvel capstone. It's a nerdy thing to do, but that's what I did back in Code Fellows, and I still talk about it because it's like my #1 passion of like all these problems I had to solve. So find something that's like a very specific thing for y'all.
All right,
I,
go ahead.
if I could get in, I like following Nadia because I feel like our contexts definitely run parallel. From what I'm, first of all, we're hiring. I wrote down like, don't forget to mention hiring. I'm being distracted by that. But yeah, like when you sponsor a lot of people, like how do you lose trust with your network is by kind of sponsoring without really building trust first, without really sort of like knowing that a person, I mean, likability can be dangerous when you sponsor likable, but don't follow through, you know, those likable folks don't follow through with, you know, what's needed for success. You lose trust. And so it's, you know, again, like think of the human, think of me as a human at scale. I don't want to lose trust with people. But I want to offer a practical, like it's show over tell. I think show is a wonderful way to build that trust very quickly. I've seen that person's demo, right? That person accosted me at a meetup, but like, boy, did they have a cool game. It's kind of like Fruit Ninja, but it's haircuts instead of fruit, right? Like, I'm willing to sponsor that person already, right? Like to Nadia's point about narrative. So when you get your shot, shoot your shot, but like make sure that it's like there's something of substance there. That's something beyond that you're likable and that you're willing, and that you built something or solved a problem, right? That's what we're all looking for here on this side of the stage.
All right, and we're just a little bit over time, but I want to give a huge thank you to our 6 panelists. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Francine. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Ismedias. Thank you, Isaac. This was fantastic, and it's because of you. And thank you to all of the great questions. I know we didn't get to every single question. I have all of them. So I'm going to put the rest of them in the meetup message board for those that want to. We'll crowdsource some answers for you on those. But otherwise, thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Steve.